filthy, filthy book.
So, that's my thought on promiscuous sex looking fun.
Oof. Now that I read these books, I'm just gonna go about my life shouting orgy porgy, calling people phonies, and old sports. Hello! So I recently put out a video where I went thrift book shopping for banned books. The reason I decided to do this was because I felt like I was seeing in the news or online a lot this issue of banning books being brought back up. I took it as an opportunity to not only go shopping and pick up some books that I had frankly been meaning to read for a very long time, but also to actually read those books. So I ended up reading 3 books that were banned, or according to the ALA, have been the most controversial or have been subject to the most book bannings across schools or across different areas, and I decided to read them. So those 3 books that I decided to read were, because I had you guys vote on them, I forgot to mention that. Brave New World. Oh wait, let me go grab the books. Be helpful if I showed them, because for once I have physical books and not my Kindle that I'm showing you guys, because I bought these. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And last, but certainly not least, Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Now let's go ahead and get into my reactions after reading these books. I just finished one of the most magical books I've read, which was The Great Gatsby. Believe it or not, this was not required reading for me when I was in school. And to be frankly honest, I wasn't expecting to like it so much. Boy, was I wrong. This was so pleasant and colorful, and the imagery, the style of writing, everything in this just really painted a picture of grandeur and luxury and gold. Gold!
I love gold!
So I have been using ALA's list of banned and challenged classics. The first one was actually The Great Gatsby. It says, challenged by the Baptist College in Charleston, South Carolina, 1987 because of language and sexual references in the book. The only sexual reference I can immediately think of from this book was with Myrtle talking about her boob getting filleted off her chest after getting hit by the car. I don't know why I'm laughing. I don't even really remember any sexualization or overly explicit context or words or imagery in this book. Am I missing something? I need to look this up. What do I even look up? Sexual references in The Great Gatsby? Feels dirty. Oh, the orgy scene? I guess when I think about sex in books or shows or movies or whatever media I'm consuming, unless it's overly explicit, unnecessary, or gratuitous, I think there's oftentimes a purpose for that. I don't know. I just think that unless it was completely... Bless me. What was I saying? Homosexuality and homoerotica, where was that? It says Nick Carraway with his interaction with other male characters in the book. Specifically, Nick's descriptive language carries a homoerotic effect. That is actually the reason that I liked this book, is because of reading and experiencing through the lens of Nick Carraway. You have such a more colorful representation of what's going on, because I think, in my opinion, I think Nick Carraway's obviously, he sees himself as a highly intellectual person, and he's kind of surrounded by the brutish Tom, Daisy, who's kind of head in the clouds and overlooks a lot of things that maybe she shouldn't, juxtaposed next to someone like Jay Gatsby, who was this overly indulgent, larger than life character. You don't do those characters justice without having flowery language. Is that what we're talking about? I'm really confused at this point. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It was such beautiful writing. The characters were so interesting. Even the characters that you're not supposed to necessarily enjoy, I kind of identified with them at a certain level. Sometimes for me, reading someone like Daisy, of course, it's frustrating to see someone who's just so disillusioned and allows herself to be disillusioned, but isn't there a part of us that somehow wants to enjoy the ignorance sometimes? There's definitely, for me, merit in the saying, ignorance is bliss. And Daisy for me is kind of the definition of it. Even though she is privy to a lot of the things that she is guilty of or participating in, I just think that, you know, she's kind of like understands her role is stand there and look pretty. And I think sometimes it's easier to do that than accept the reality of what's going on around you or what you're contributing to a situation. So I just think that was done so well in this book that I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed this world. I really enjoyed the flowery language or the way that Nick Carraway spoke, even though, you know, it was supposed to be like non-judgmental, but it was also judgmental. This book was just so good. I would definitely recommend this. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I guess I'll see you guys when I read my next book. Ooh. Well, I have to say, if the orgies in The Great Gatsby were a little too subtle for you, boy, does Brave New World have a treat for you. Orgy porgy. I must admit, I had no idea what Brave New World was about before I read the book, and I was pleasantly surprised. I did actually really enjoy this book. Let's take a look as to why this has been challenged over the years according to the ALA. Banned in Ireland because it makes promiscuous sex look like fun. Well, they're not wrong. Like, in the whole world, AF after Ford in Brave New World, essentially society has been stripped of all emotions. Babies are born from like wombs outside of a mother. Babies are conditioned, children are sleep conditioned, and there's a specific caste system that exists within Brave New World. And on top of that, sex in Brave New World is considered something that is very mundane. It is almost very, you know, everyone is everyone's possession almost. Everyone should be welcome to everyone is kind of the general idea. So I guess in that sense, it makes promiscuous sex. What I'm trying to say here is it normalizes communal sex within this society. Orgy porgy. But at the same time, the whole point of Brave New World is to position it as a way that there's no freedom within this dystopian world. That everyone is existing exactly how they were intended to by the government, essentially. The government is replacing God, or even Soma is replacing God, which is like Soma's their happy pills. So if there's any issues, you know, take a little Soma. But also on the promiscuous sex front, Lenina is also confused by her sexuality. I think a lot of the characters experience this whole, the urge of sexuality, but at the same time, not feeling emotion behind it or being conditioned to not feel emotion behind it. So Lenina, is it Lenina or Lenina? Lenina. I want to say Lenina, and I'm probably saying it wrong. But in my head, when I was reading the book, I was saying Lenina, so I'm just going to go on a cue saying Lenina. When Lenina approaches John in the book, he's immediately repulsed by her forwardness because he's more romanticized emotions and feelings and relationships in his mind. So he's actually surprised by her forwardness, and she's surprised by his lack of wanting her. And in the book, she actually has this like inner dialogue where she questions like, why doesn't he want me? Am I not desirable? Aldous Huxley is connecting the emotions to sex and sexuality, but at the same time, people don't understand in the book why it's separate, if that makes sense. So I think it's a really interesting juxtaposition to read through, because a lot of times with how Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, you do get an inside read on what the character's actually thinking.
So that's my thought on promiscuous sex looking fun.
Yada, yada, yada. Same. Challenged but retained in South Texas Independent School District in Mercedes, Texas, 2003. Parents objected to the adult theme, sexuality, drugs, suicide that appeared in the novel. Huxley's book was a part of the Summer Science Academy curriculum. The board voted to give parents more control over their children's choices by requiring principals to automatically offer an alternative to a challenged book. So a little bit about some of the themes that you encounter in Brave New World. But on top of that, it does, obviously, like I've mentioned throughout this, it talks about sexuality, drugs through the Soma, and then suicide towards the end of the book, which hopefully you've read the book, or I might give you a big spoiler right now. But at the end of the book, John, the Savage, hangs himself because he is just so
upset with the reality of the world. He obviously values the independence of thought and having emotions, and obviously everyone else around him in the state did not have that same exposure. He also, you know, participated in some of those sexual acts I mentioned earlier towards the end of the book. Porgy. And then through that, he just felt completely disgraced, just didn't see any other way out. The actual act in itself was not at all glamorized within this book. Unlike, I know how there was a lot of controversy around 13 Reasons Why, kind of for the same reasons, and some of the points I could somewhat understand, but at the same time, this was like a desperate person acting in a desperate way, and I felt it was clearly apparent in the way that this book was written. So that's kind of my thoughts on that and Brave New World. I'm on to my next banned book, and I'll keep you guys posted. So I just finished The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, and I apologize if the lighting's a little different. I literally just finished this and it's nighttime, but I wanted to give you guys an immediate reaction to me reading this and then going onto the ALA's website and looking at reasons why it was contested or banned in various schools. So let me go ahead and pull that up. Oof. Okay. So I did not know this before I read this book, but The Catcher in the Rye looks like it has some of the longest list of reasons why it was contested, so this one's gonna be juicy. And I will say, this one probably had the most content, having read it in the mindset that I'm like, okay, this book was debated or contested. I could pick out reasons like, okay, that's probably why, okay, that's probably why, okay, that's probably why. I'm gonna have to pick a couple and react to them, so let me go ahead and read through this list a little bit. 1963, delegation of parents of high school students in Columbus, Ohio asked the school board to ban the novel for being anti-white and obscene. The school board refused the request. Good on that school board. I have no idea where it would be anti-white, and I don't know if it was like contextually at the time, like something going on. I have no idea. That doesn't make any sense to me. Let me go and move on to another one. It was removed from, I guess, various school districts. It looks like removed from Issaquah, Washington, removed from reading list in Middleville, Michigan, removed from Jackson Milton School Libraries in North Jackson, Ohio, removed from two Anniston, Alabama high school libraries, removed from school libraries in Morris, Manitoba. So this one was actually removed from some of the reading lists throughout some school districts, and it looks like it says excess vulgar language, sexual scenes, things concerning moral issues, excessive violence, and anything dealing with the occult.
What?
I don't know what that last part, anything dealing with the occult, means, but I guess like the vulgar language or the profanity, because I'm seeing that kind of brought up in various different points. The main character, Holden Caulfield, is a 16-year-old. He's obviously going to use profanity. I feel like that's just how some kids talk. And honestly, it's not even like he was dropping F-bombs. He was more like using, I guess, God's name in vain. Even as someone who doesn't use those words in day-to-day life, it doesn't bother me reading someone else who uses profanity or those types of words because they're not me. So there's that. Sexual scenes, things concerning moral issues, that has along the vein, I believe, that Holden Caulfield, as I mentioned, he's a 16-year-old boy, and any 16-year-old person would relate to going through puberty and having urges or ideas, things in your mind that you're not necessarily sure of what they mean. And obviously a lot of times they have to do with sexual things. And so I think it makes his character more believable because he's going through the motions of like being attracted to some girls and being attracted to some things in his mind he's not sure about, and like questioning why he's into certain things or why he seems to get a kick off certain things. So I think all of that adds to his relatability. He does at one point hire a prostitute, but even then, he doesn't even have sex with the prostitute. He like literally pays her off to get her to leave because he feels so awkward about it. Okay. This one makes me laugh. Okay, challenged in Linton Stockton, Indiana High School, 1988, because the book is blasphemous and undermines morality. I don't know why the word blasphemous makes me laugh, and I think it's because I use the word blasphemous, like, ironically. Oxford Hills High School, a parent objected to the use of the F word. Oh, okay, I guess there was the F word in it. Clearly it didn't even stick out to me because I just glazed right by it. Removed by a Dorchester District 2 school board member in Somerville, South Carolina, 2001 because it is a filthy, filthy book. I don't know. Filthy, filthy book. again, like I said, the whole point of the book is you're basically reading Holden Caulfield's experience as a 16-year-old boy. He's premature graying, he's taller, he had this growth spurt. He's also dealing with grief after the loss of his brother, which was clearly very traumatic for him, and he's also experiencing all of the motions of going through that trauma for him throughout the book. He's trying to preserve his innocence because now he's entering this phase of leaving childhood into adulthood, and he sees his sister even as like a trophy of innocence that he must maintain and preserve, hence Catcher in the Rye, because he's basically trying to catch all the children and preserve their innocence. And so for me, reading this book, I didn't necessarily relate to it, hence the 3.5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it, but I was almost reading it, and this is gonna sound really weird, as like a parental figure. Like, I felt sorry for Holden Caulfield. He obviously didn't have outlets or know how to express himself, and I think for me, being a little bit older, that doesn't necessarily resonate with me because I'm past that phase in my life, or I've kind of worked my way through that phase. But for kids in school reading this type of content, I think that can be very valuable because he asks questions about moving forward in life. He's also dealing with a lot of things, and inevitably a lot of kids and teenagers are going to be dealing with those things. And by removing a book like this, you're not preventing those children from seeing or dealing with or experiencing any of the things that this book has been contested about or for. You're just eliminating their relatability in someone else that they can say like, hey, I'm not alone, or like, okay, this makes a little bit more sense because he's going through his thought process, or we're kind of reading it through his mind and how he's seeing things, and maybe that's relatable to kids. And also, he ends up in a mental hospital at the end of the book, so it's not even saying like he's a perfect character or that everything he's doing is right, or even that all of his actions were positive. So anyways, I hope that makes sense. I feel like my thoughts on this were a little bit jumbled because I just have such a hard time, because it's like one of those things, just because you take a book out of a library doesn't mean kids aren't going to see, experience, hear, read, watch, in some way, shape, or form, whatever you're trying to protect or shelter them from. In fact, a lot of times you remove the coping mechanism that kids have, or the outlet that kids might have for feeling normal or feeling more accepted, or, you know, understanding maybe why they're feeling a certain way or relate to someone else. Anywho, Catcher in the Rye. It's a filthy, filthy book. Also, I have a new appreciation for the word phony. I don't think I've ever read that word so much in my life. Phony.
Alrighty, so I really thoroughly enjoyed reading these books, and a lot of times when I come up with video ideas for this channel, they're really based around what I am trying to get myself to read, or what I am looking forward to reading them. I'm just trying to find reasons for me to read them, and that was kind of the purpose of this video, because I had so many classic books based in literature that was never required reading for me, or that I'd never read when I was a child, that I just wanted to experience now. So I thought this would be a good video idea. And now that we have gone ahead and addressed my reactions to them, I am curious what your guys' reaction to these books. So definitely leave those in the comments section down below if you guys have read any of these, or if this has inspired you to maybe go back to some of the classics you've had on your TBR for a while and you're inspired to read them now. Also, speaking of comments, I kind of wanted to address some of the comments in my last video, because I don't know if I wasn't clear enough on some of the things I was saying, or if there was just a misunderstanding. So I'm gonna be reacting to some comments. If you guys like this part of the video, let me know. I can react to more comments in my future videos. And yeah, because I always read them and I always get a kick out of them. I got a lot of comments along this vein. Wow, I had no idea that these books had been banned. It's disturbing, but thanks for the upload. Great video. So it's tricky because it's not like these books are being pulled off the shelves, at least from my understanding. They're not being pulled out of, I was gonna say Borders, but Borders has been closed for a really long time. Like Barnes & Noble or like Amazon, wherever you get your book purchases. It's not that they're getting pulled off those types of shelves, it's that they're more being taken out of student libraries because either concerned parents or churches, as I learned, or different organizations have been trying to remove them because of their controversial or explicit content. so kids can't read them. And while, as I'm sure we all know, a youth's mind is very malleable and impressionable, I also think it's a very important time to expose children to things that they're most likely going to experience in life, if not already experiencing. Then I had this other comment that says, this video is a bit confusing. You mentioned book bannings in recent times, like current year, yet bring up books that have been discussed in classrooms for ages. If you had one more modern book, at least it would make some sort of sense. Unless, of course, the current book banning efforts are on these, which is odd when there are little channels on YouTube promoting books with steamy scenes, books where robots eliminate the human race, even though BookTube acts like it's a place where LGBTQ people are cherished. A big lie if they're promoting that book, because there's no way eliminating humans as a species fix the problems those who identify that way face. Oh, never mind. I figured out it's because these books are written by dead white men, so it is a recent thing. Yep, because if someone is a white male, the world hates them. That is the only way this video makes any sort of sense. I'll be honest, I'm like, there are so many points in that comment, like I'm a little confused. I was just literally looked up the ALA, most controversial and banned books, and that's the list that came up. I didn't want to do like year by year because they change so often that I thought I would be hitting more points, because let's face it, a lot of literature nowadays are based off of these books, hence why they're classics. And so I thought I would get a better understanding from the actual, I guess, first books themselves, if that makes sense, than the books nowadays. Because despite the fact that I think you mentioned like LGBTQ in this, that was actually something that came up in these books. So like I said, it's not necessarily because I wanted to avoid those. It's just because in my mind, the classics are what writers nowadays base their writing off of a lot of times. Like I would be going back to basics with book banning, if that makes sense. I don't know. Hopefully that was helpful. I think we're also confusing each other. So I confuse myself a lot of times. Oh my God, Buddy, how cute. I know. He's so cute. Came to watch Morgan Stayed for Buddy. Me too. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you guys did, like I said earlier, leave it in the comment section down below your thoughts. Give me a like on this video, subscribe for more content like this, and as always, I hope you guys are happy and healthy, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys!